So let me first of all start a bit sentimental, but the book is dedicated to my parents, and because really about the value system that I learned and come to learn over time. So that's really what about. You can just go on. You just move on. Okay. So the foreword is written by Nsima. Hopefully she'll be here. She is the CMO of Lagos Business School, and the lead review is written by Dr. Christopher Kolade, one of the strongest personal brands that I also use as a case study in the book. Now, we can move on. We can move on. But I think Nneka has pointed out the issue of the storytelling approach, and because at the end of the day, I didn't want it to be a book that is very technical that people cannot understand. So whether or not you're a marketing person or a brand manager, you can. And it really speaks to the fact about branding being a combination of personal branding being a combination of character and reputation. There's always a tendency to think about reputation, but reputation that is not founded on character is not enduring. So that's a key thing. Please also come with me. All right. So you asked me this question earlier on. So why the book? So personal branding, a lot of people think it's about faking it until you make it. And one of the things that I'm challenging is it's not about faking it until you make it. It has to be grounded on solid ground. And it's not just about, again, social media alone. Social media is important, but in terms of driving a personal brand, but it goes beyond that. It's about perception that is created and differentiation, which we already spoke to. Please go on. Please go on. So I asked a question in the book about how do you like your donuts, and by the way, we do have some donuts which are differentiated. So the issue, it'll be interesting to see with people, what people pick. And it's really the way we're picking the different donuts is how people also pick us, whether it is in career, whether it's in business, even in terms of the relationships that we build. It's really about perceptions and differentiation. And that's one of the concepts that one builds up in terms of the book. All right. And I speak in the book about brands and how brands differentiate themselves. Please go on. Okay. And here, simply a brand is just talking about it being a distinct identity and a means of differentiation. That's simply what a brand is. So I think for us as human beings, as brands, as people, it's really about how do we differentiate ourselves. Okay. So please go on. In the book, we also talk about positioning, the space each of us occupies in the minds of people. Whether we like it or not, people already have perceptions of us, about us. Now, the issue is if the perception that they have of us is not the perception that we would desire, then there's a challenge. I tell a story in the book of how early on in my career, I was seen as a snob. And I didn't think that was correct. But as far as those people were concerned, that was their own personal reality. So I had to do certain things to change that perception. So concept talk about. Also talk about the concept of brand equity, the value that brands, whether it's product or services or people have. It's simply about the worth of value that is placed on you as a person, and will actually determine what leverage you have, whether in terms of how much you earn in where you work or how much you can charge for the services. So the concept of brand equity is discussed, but simply it's about the worth of the value. And then they talk about the key drivers of brand equity being awareness, talking about the quality that you bring to play, the brand associations, what people see about you. I use an example of, for example, Debola Williams. When people see him or think about him, they're thinking around red and white. So how do you build things that can be identified you as a person? And then, please go on. I also try and make a case about the biggest brands in the world and how they've gotten to that point. It's not just about the quality of their product, it's about the branding. And here, there are about 10 brands. And I dare say with confidence that every one of us online or on site here has interacted with at least one of these brands today. So it speaks about the strength of brands. And there are different brands being shown here. And so whether or not you like any of these brands, it's up to you. All right. And the blank space there is who? Is you. So it's about how you're differentiated. And the truth of the matter, each of these people here are differentiated. Yeah. For good, for bad, or ugly, they are differentiated. This part. So and then to articulate what personal branding is, and I'll just quickly run through this. The first, just a simple definition. It's really about how you articulate and communicate your skills, your attributes, your personality, your values, and vision. If I was going to summarize it, the last bullet point here is really about your skills, your values, and your personality. If you're thinking about personal branding, that's how do you bring that to play in your favor, so to speak. Next part, please. And so I made this point earlier on. A strong personal brand can boost your business brand, can boost your career brand. So this is the framework, and I'll just summarize this and then stop. So over time, as I began to reflect about personal branding, because there's a lot of talk about personal branding, especially on social media, but a lot of it is very basic and it's very dependent on social media driving. And because I reflected in the past 13, 14 years, I then realized that there are certain models, certain things that you can build together. And I thought it was useful to make it easier for people to understand what personal branding is. And so with reflection over the years, came up with this framework, which is proprietary, right? And trademarked. So it talks about 2 A's, 2 B's, and 2 C's, where the first A is assessment. We tend to do the SWOT analysis for businesses, but I was wondering if people do a SWOT analysis about themselves. And I think part of the process, first step in building a strong personal brand is do a SWOT analysis. So that assessment, and it speaks about how do you identify your personal brand purpose. And then authenticity, right? How are you true to yourself and not necessarily be a clone? And I give examples in the book about how some people had built authenticity around them. I always used to say to people who look up to me as the mentor, when they say, "Oh, I want to be like you when you grow up," and I say, "You'll be better. You'll be yourself and be better," right? So it's great to have role models, but then how do you seek to bring your own strengths and leverage your own strengths? And then the first B is beliefs. All right. I think it's at every brand, whether it's a Coca-Cola, whether it's an Apple, they have core values. And I find that it's important that in building a personal brand, we have core values that guide us, regardless of what faith you profess. It's useful to have as a person some core values that then guide you. And I give an example of my own core values in the book and how it guides me. And you may not always live up to those core values. You might fail, but the key thing is that if it triggers something in your head. Okay, and one example I give is one of my core values is about respect for people. And I always say I would never call anybody a fool, for example, no matter what anybody does. And I think I've succeeded most of the time over the years. But I think some years ago, I had this driver that was exasperating. And and somehow from somewhere, I called him a fool. But immediately I did that, my value system kicked. And I immediately said to him, "I'm sorry." So it just kind of helps you in terms of building brand that you want. And then boldness to work in what you've defined as your positioning and your value system. And then credibility. It's about cultivating and showcasing excellence and the things you want to project. So I speak about how you can build credibility and then ultimately consistency. And that's really where the issue of what you make it doesn't work, because it's a long run. Building a personal brand is not overnight. It's a marathon. It's how can it be said of you that this is what you stand for? And 30 years, 50 years on, people can say, yes, this is the brand, right? And then, so those are the 2 A's and the 2 B's and 2 C's. And then there's what I might call a bonus chapter in chapter 9, which speaks about reinventing for growth, because you're not going to be static. You evolve as a brand, and you can get even stronger as a brand. So that's, in a nutshell, what the book's about. Happy to take questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think when I saw the slide with the various images, I remember that as I was reading the book, I was just smiling all through and saying, I like how relatable the examples are, because we tend to read books by like Seth Godin and the rest, and the examples are like far-fetched. So it's a devotional I use for kids, and it's written by Kenneth and Gloria Copeland. And so they're talking about gangs in your school, and I'm like, they don't, this is not our reality here. They don't understand it, right? They can't gang in school, a metal detector. You don't even, what does that mean, right? So reading this, I was like, examples, real life examples. Nicola Williams, Dye Your Eyes. You know, people here that you have seen, you have heard about, and what I also like about what you shared is that many times for me personally, before I started writing online, I struggled with the concept of what does personal brand mean, right? You say build your personal brand. What are they going on about? You know. But this book helps to articulate what that is about. How do you want to be perceived? How are you showing your unique talent, you know, your time, your treasure? There's a fourth T that I found intriguing. I'm trying to remember now. Talk. Yes. I've always seen time, talent, treasure. But for the first time I saw talk, and I wanted you to talk about that, you know, why you added that in. So I like the storytelling format and how it works. Okay, so I wanted to ask, right, you on page let me go to 21. Page 21. You said that we should start with a vision, right? I want to talk about the SWOT analysis. And I wanted to ask a question. Do we have to start with a clear vision? Can we just start? You know, how does that work?
If you don't know where you're going, you end up anywhere. So it's important that you have some idea, which can be refined as it goes on. But at least have an idea. Right? So I want to get to Ibadan, right? So I kind of have an idea. Now, how I'm going to get there, I may not have clarity about. So I think that vision helps, some kind of vision or goals, objectives, help to start you through the process.
Thank you. I asked that question because, again, linked to the fact that some of us may not be clear as to what personal brand is and how you build it. The definition in the book that clarifies and says that you are showcasing your skills, your value, and your personality. I think it's a good thing. I'm saying, what do I want to be known for? You know, what do I want to contribute? When I talk to people, I say to people that many of us, especially in this part of the world, sometimes we tend to be passive consumers on social media. We're constantly consuming. Have you ever stepped back to say, how am I going to actively contribute? And I think that's what the personal brand does. It takes you away from locking in that I'm scrolling through, you know, as you said, X is not this X, Twitter is not X, you know, in the book, you know, you are just scrolling through and you're just passively consuming, but stepping back to say to yourself, how can I actively contribute, you know, and add to the narrative? So that's why I asked that question. Okay. Another thing I wanted to talk about in terms of the SWOT analysis is, can you just break it down in terms of how to help us identify our strengths? I was speaking to some women yesterday, and someone was saying, oh, you know, almost now, whenever I send anybody a WhatsApp message, you get an automated response. Welcome to House of XXXX. Everybody seems to have a side hustle or something else that they are doing, right? And the question is, you know, how do you get which one you should do, right? And I'm asking that question tying it with personal brand to say when strengths and SWOT analysis. I have heard of it, you know, done for strengths particularly. How do I sit and identify my strengths? It's there in the book, but I'm thinking action steps of people today. While you're here, you're thinking, I've seen this book, this personal brand, you're here, you're listening. How do I particularly say which one? Where do I start from?
So, a number of ways to identify your strength. There's certain things that you kind of just know inherently. And it's really about, one, what are those things that seem to come easy for you to do? Seem to come easy. It doesn't mean you don't sharpen them, but seem to come easy. There's certain things that you just have a passion about that seem to just give you joy. Okay? So it's a combination of the things that you can do well with a bit of seeming ease, and then have a passion and then just give you joy. And then there are also things that people tell you. That's the importance of feedback. Do people tell you, this seems to be strong in these areas? And so when you bring all that together, your passion, the vision, the things that give you joy. You can almost identify the things that you seem to be natural at. And then there are things you then build on the natural things. And as you sharpen them, you then just kind of know that these are things that you are stronger. And so even as a 10-year-old, I knew that my skills were around the creative arts, the writing, the singing. And I found out a number of things then dovetailed to the communication space. So whether it's writing, whether it's singing, whether it's speaking. So I found that. So I think that inherently you would know. The thing is, how do you then begin to sharpen those skills, and also based on what people say to you. So that once you begin to understand that, then you know where you then build on. You must then sharpen those skills, right? So I think those are 3 key points that for anyone who's just seeking to know where their strengths are.
Thank you very much. You talk about perception, right? There's something I say to people. I say that it's God that looks at the heart, man looks at the outward. And I saw the word careerpreneur for the first time in here. So I want you to go unpack that for us, right? Because we talked about how our personal brands impact the business. There is that, but I want us to just, because I'm a career person, I want you to go in a bit and unpack that term, careerpreneur, please.
All right, so that came from the point of view that I had. At some point, I saw that there was a lot of noise about, with due respect to entrepreneurs, there's a lot of noise about entrepreneurship, and I began to get worried about certain advocates that suggested that you cannot succeed unless you're an entrepreneur. And I worried about that. And I thought that you can actually be a career person with the right guidance and the right financial investments. You can actually make good. Now, you may not be a billionaire necessarily, but not everybody wants to be a billionaire. Wow, must do this already. Okay, but I believe that as a career person, you can make good. You can also make money, right? The money you make and the investments. The entrepreneurs who are not succeeding, right? So for me, the word career then said, look, you can actually be a career person, be an entrepreneur, work really and have a business mindset, even though you're working for people. So how do you have a business mindset working in an organization? Because when you have a business mindset working as a careerpreneur in a business, ultimately, yes, everybody will leave those businesses, but you will, then when you now start your own business, you will have taken those traits in. So I think for me, it's really about advocating that you can be business minded and succeed as a career person. And therefore, you also need to be differentiated, even as a career person.
Fantastic. I don't even know. I need to ask Morganish intentionally chose me to do this big review because I am passionate about the fact that I say that employees can learn and deserve to be happy at work if they can manage their managers and manage their money, right? That's something you see on my LinkedIn profile. I talk about it a lot because I find that indeed employees seem to get the short end of the stick. You get into career sessions and people are talking as if they are suffering. I'm just here suffering for somebody else to make money. My life is just not amounting to anything because there's no CEO, behind my name. And this is not to say you cannot transition, but it's just saying where you are today as a career person, are you making the most of it, of the opportunity that employment offers you? Because it does offer great opportunities and advantages. So that for me was really very, very, very powerful. I like the distinction between reputation and character, right? And if I remember, let me just try to point it out. Yes, it's here on page 36. I saw this and I was very excited. Thomas Paine said, reputation is what men and women think of us. Character is what God and the angels know of us. I almost screamed when I read it. Like, what? I want you to unpack this, and I want you to unpack it with examples, right? Or an example of this distinction between character and reputation. What God and the angels know, the inside gist. If you can back any personal experience or something because of your career over the years you've seen, please help us stand that.
So first of all, let me say that God help all of us. All right. Because there's a tendency to focus so much about reputation, and if you're not careful, you don't take care of the issue of the character. So in the book, I quote Proverbs 22 verse 1, that a good name is better than good riches, right? Better doesn't mean riches are not, just is better. But you see, in that quote, when you look at it, when it talks about a good name, it's a combination of character and reputation. And so you find, let me first of all speak from a product perspective. If you have a product and the quality is suspect, and you do all the advertising in the world, yes, so it may appear to be a strong brand, may have a good reputation for a period, but the more people try the brand and don't living up to the promise quality-wise, they will drop off. So from a product perspective or a service perspective, that works. So when you translate it to personal branding perspective, it's the same. The character is foundational, is fundamental. The reputation is what people see. Now, if reputation is good and there's an issue with character, it is not addressed. Ultimately, at some point, and when I began to think about this, like I said, many years ago, one ready example at that time was Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods had a fantastic reputation. His golfing skills were out of this world. But beyond his golfing skills, he has a fantastic reputation. He was squeaky clean, right? He was one of the strongest personal brands at the time. But underneath the reputation, there were some character flaws and challenges, which unfortunately were not addressed, and then stuff hit the ceiling, so to speak. And his reputation ultimately was damaged, and took a long time for it to come back. And so for me, I called that the Tiger Woods syndrome at that time. And then as I began to reflect upon this, I then said the character charisma syndrome, where there's a lot of focus around charisma, being charismatic, have a strong reputation. But then there's something about character that needs to be addressed. And I so speak, and for me, it's also something that I speak about to myself, that you deal with any of these areas, because then you want to be careful that your character and your reputation are aligned together.
Thank you very much. My position, and my mother-in-law says something. She prays one prayer. She says, I pray for you that if they see you, they want to see you. You know, and for me, I think that speaks to whose perception of you, you know, and how you're positioning. And you know, you in page 37, you talk about your creed, right? And I wanted to ask, how long did it take you to come up with it, you know? And have you ever struggled with keeping to? I mean, you shared the example of calling driver, you know, but have ever struggled with keeping to any part of this creed?
So it took, like I said, as I reflected upon myself, personality, character, reputation, and the brand I want to build, and then so, okay, look, this creed is probably what I would like to be seen as. And yes, I have struggled, and I gave the example earlier on about specs, right? So when it does happen, there's a trigger. So for each of the components of the values that make up the creed, what I constantly seek to do is live up to it. And when there's been a challenge, because I have it right here, and then course correct as quickly as possible. So yes, have I kept to all the elements of the creed 100% all the time? No. But then, because I have it there, engraved in my heart and my head, I get quickly reminded when I'm failing any of the creed, and it then helps me to course correct and ensure that things don't go out of hand.
Thank you. I think that what stands out for me is even having one at all. Because many times we have good intentions, we intend to be good people. That's our plan. We didn't plan to do that bad thing, but we get into a situation and we're not quite sure where we stand anymore. You know, it's not looking so black and white and so clearly divided anymore, and so we're easily swayed. So I think it's even sitting down, having something that defines you, and say, this is who I am. This is how I want to be. This is how I want to be remembered as people encounter me. All right.
And just to speak about that, so one of the things I do to try and also help myself and put myself in a spot, especially when I go into a new environment, especially maybe a workplace, maybe a new role, I normally will share values and the creed. And I then say to people, take me on, right? And it's a way to just help me keep on the right track.
Thank you very much. Works very much. Go into a new place, announce yourself and say, this is who I want to, this is who I am. Then let people hold you to it. Okay. On page 1, you talk about who you know and who knows you, right? And I tell people that when it comes to your brand at work, it's one thing for you to know the work. It's another thing for your boss, your manager, to know that you know the work. It's a third thing for a manager to know that you know the work. So you know the work. Your direct supervisor knows you know the work. And then the third leg is that they know that you know the work itself. I say that to ask the question, within the framework of the 2 ABCs, right? What would you say, in your experience, people struggle with the most?
I don't know which one most people struggle with, but I think if I was forced to, because they actually lead to each other, but ultimately it will be the 2 C's in terms of credibility, sustain your credibility, showcasing your excellence, and being consistent over time. And as you were speaking, I just got reminded about a situation I also got into. So I'd worked in this company for, I can share, I worked in Cadbury for 18 years. And my final role was out of Nigeria, in Kenya. Okay. But then something happened in Cadbury, Nigeria, while I was away. And a number of people, senior people, left the business. And so when I was ending my tenure in Cadbury, I wasn't necessarily planning to leave. But as I was trying to look for what next steps and opportunities, I had a conversation with the then HR director for the region, Africa and Middle East, an Irish lady. And I said, look, what's next step, right? I've done this here, the results show, so what's next? And as we had the conversation, the next thing she said was, Lampe, the thing is, all the people who knew you have left the business. So speaking to you about in the place, right? Who you know, who knows you. So at that point in time, there were changes. As they say, the Pharaoh who knew Joseph had gone. And so it's important that constantly you are, and this is not about being abrasive or being too upfront, but as you do work, how do you showcase in humility? Exactly. How do you tell your story with humility? Yeah.
So it's credibility and
yes.
Fantastic. I was going to ask credibility because when I was reading, I saw that it links to excellence, and I said to myself, can a brand do without excellence? Right? Because say I am credible, but we've defined it and you've hinged it on excellence. Right? And I said to myself, because sometimes I feel like people think, excellence is some very high standard, it's hard. But if we realize that it's supposed to be the norm, that every time we show up, we're supposed to show up excellent, right? So is it possible for anyone to do without excellence, right? And then can you help us unpack how that helps to elevate us in terms of earning? Because you talked about personal brand and revenue.
I think anyone who wants to grow cannot do without excellence. If the choice, and I say it's like choice, if the choice is you don't want to grow, you want to remain stagnant, or your path wants to decline, then you can do without excellence. But if you want to grow, you want to be known for positive, then you must constantly pursue excellence. And I think excellence is not, in my view, a destination. It's a continuum. You need to constantly challenge yourself to get better and better by the day, because yesterday's excellence might not be sufficient for today and tomorrow's excellence. And that's why the long jumpers, high jumpers keeps on getting the Olympic spirit, faster, higher, stronger. So I think excellence is really about saying, how do you just keep stretching and seeking to be outstanding in everything that you do? I speak about the moment of truth. I think every moment of truth is an opportunity to showcase the work that you can do with excellence. I had a former managing director that said to me that there's no small presentation, right? And I took that to heart. It doesn't matter even if I have just 1 minute of presentation. How do I prepare? I can prepare 24 hours for that 1 minute just to ensure that it's right. So I think that it's about pursuit of excellence, challenging to get better. Saying, how can you do things differently and better every opportunity that you have? And not just in the workplace, in any community or any sphere of endeavor that you're in.
So I'm enjoying the conversation, and I think I'm getting carried away. Because I just looked at the agenda again. I'm like, oh, Nectar, I'm supposed to do this for 25 minutes, and I know we've done like 40 minutes plus. I apologize. I've been enjoying myself. Please, I would like to take questions from the audience. So if we have questions in the audience, please, and for those of us online as well, if we do have questions, please let's share. You talk about excellence, and as you explained it and about getting better, I remember that in the book you talk about reinventing yourself, right? I want you to talk about that a bit, because I find that sometimes talk about, oh, we should pivot, do something differently and all of that. Can you unpack to us what that looks like in terms of reinventing yourself in this journey of a personal brand?
Okay, so brands, whether it's consumer goods brands or personal brands, can decline at times. Reputation can diminish. But the issue is, how do you want to sustain and extend your sell-by date, so to speak, the shelf life? And so once you recognize, again, it comes to doing a SWOT analysis to understand where you are at that point in time and what are the strengths that you want to leverage and any weaknesses that you need to address. So that SWOT analysis will help you understand. Then you also say you want to have a renewed vision in terms of where you want to get to and how you want to be seen from that personal brand. So once you've done that SWOT analysis and say the current status that you are, and then you've clarified what your vision is, then you can begin to be able to build a roadmap how you want to get there, right? Some of you may be, I have this strength that I'm not leveraging. So how can I begin to apply it, right? Using myself as an example, I've worked in brands marketing for several years, but I want to also begin to look beyond that core that I'm in. Issues around broadcasting, issues around copywriting and things like that. So you begin to look at those trends and then you say, look, how do you put yourself in situations and let the world, let the universe also know that this is the area that you're trying to get to, and then build your skills, sharpen your talents in that area, and then begin to execute. So the reinvention really is about clarifying where you want to get to, what strengths do you have, what new strengths do you want to leverage and build, and also what weaknesses do you want to address. In the book, I give an example of a 7-year-old professor in Jester Ibadan, professor who is doing a new PhD in another terrain, right? Professor Mark Nwagu. If you're on Facebook, check him out. He's very active on Facebook, by the way. But he's doing a PhD, and just about a week or two ago, he's gotten approval to now go on to the next stage of his thesis. He's hoping he will finish by the time he's 90. And I pray he finishes. So you can actually reinvent as you go, but you need to clarify the vision, the strengths and the weaknesses.
Okay, so as I head down, I say, like you saying you want to do masters. This masters, which year will you do it? My husband have been, I see. I don't know if I have power. It's like these children I born there. I'm giving them all the brain. I'm not sure. This for someone who was written exams all her life. I used to write exams every year up to 2015. But after that, I don't know. God will help us. So the reason I asked that question is for us to come into a place of awareness. I find that one of the greatest gifts anybody can give themselves is self-awareness, understanding your own strengths. And we'll talk about personal branding, and many of us and it's a human mind, we tend to be locked in the negatives, all the areas we're struggling, all the areas we have weaknesses, we tend to be locked in those and forget that everybody has those, but it's your responsibility to look at your strengths and leverage them. In the workplace, for example, I remember in the session we were at, and someone was presenting on the economy, and all those data and the numbers, and I was just like, Neka, if only you can present like this, they will just see you differently. While that thought was coming, I was like, no, there is something good about you, and there are areas you can present about that will sound better, right? So I asked that question so that we can all come into that place where I want us to live here with action.